It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story, the Chancellor cuts national insurance. Increases to universal credit and pensions, plus cuts to tax. Jeremy Hunt spends in his autumn statement, but the tax burden continues to rise.
We cut taxes to help bigger businesses invest. We cut taxes to help smaller businesses grow. We cut taxes for the self-employed.
Also coming up on Sky News at 10, we're live in Israel, where people await the release of hostages taken more than 6 weeks ago. Israel's military releases video of what it says are Hamas tunnels in Gaza, as details emerge of the deal between Hamas and Israel about the release of 50 hostages. Trucks carrying aid line up at the border, waiting for a ceasefire as the bombing of Gaza continues.
Also ahead, an investigation at Niagara Falls Bridge, an explosion and 2 dead after a car crashes into a checkpoint at the US-Canada border. And the friends of the 4 teenagers found dead after a car crash in North Wales described them as gentle and kind-hearted. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's coming up in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. The Chancellor delivered his autumn statement today, unveiling a boost to millions of workers' pay packets with a cut to national insurance. Jeremy Hunt described it as the biggest tax cut in British history, but admitted to Sky News that it would take time to bring taxes down. Tonight we'll get political reaction and reaction from voters. But first, let's take a look at some of the main points announced by the Chancellor today. A cut in the main rate of employee national insurance from 12 to 10% from January the 6th. He's also increasing universal credit by 6.7% from April, and the state pension will increase by 8.5%. Full expensing will be made permanent for businesses, which means for every £1 million invested, a company will get £250,000 off its tax bill. For the self-employed, Class 2 national insurance is being abolished altogether, and the national living wage is increasing by 9.8% to £11.44 an hour. All alcohol duty is being frozen until August, but duty on tobacco will rise. And £500 million was announced to fund artificial intelligence. Sky's political editor Beth Rigby has this report.
An autumn statement for growth from a government and a party in decline and trying to turn its fortunes around before a general election.
Is this the last chance to win an election, Chancellor? Is this the last roll of the dice? Is this enough, Chancellor?
He certainly hopes so, clutching his autumn statement and hoping its contents can convince voters. The headline offer a 2 percentage point cut to national insurance for January.
That change will help 27 million people. I'm introducing urgent legislation to bring it in from January the 6th. So people can see the benefit in their payslips at the start of the new year.
And for businesses, an £11 billion tax break for those investing in machinery and equipment.
I will today make full expensing permanent. That is the largest business tax cut in modern British history.
The message crystal clear.
We cut taxes to help bigger businesses invest. We cut taxes to help smaller businesses grow. We cut taxes for the self-employed who keep our country running.
But reality's somewhat different to rhetoric. Whatever he said at the dispatch box, independent forecasts show the overall tax burden will still be growing and we're all still being taxed more. But this Chancellor wanting to give voters an immediate hit.
We will increase the full new state pension, increase universal credit, increase the national living wage.
Labour arguing small giveaways now is all too little, too late.
The questions that people will be asking at the next election and after today's autumn statements are simple. Do me and my family feel better off after 13 years of Conservative government? In fact, does anything in Britain work better today than when the Conservatives came into office 13 years ago?
Hi, Beth. Nice to see you.
Statement delivered now for the messaging, but is it all smoke and mirrors? It sounds like a tax giveaway, but you know and I know the NI cut is worth £9 billion. It's dwarfed by the £45 billion you are taking as people get pulled into higher tax bands because you have frozen thresholds, and by wage rises as well. Overall, have you taxed more or cut taxes more?
We have put taxes up because it was the right thing to do
So
to
you're
support
taxing
families.
more?
Hang on, will you let me answer the question, Beth? Because it was the right thing to do to support families and businesses through the pandemic and energy shock. We said that when we could afford to do so, provided it didn't hurt the battle against inflation, which is also eroding people's incomes, we would start to bring them down.
Are taxes going up or down under this government?
Taxes have gone up, and
They're
we are
going up.
starting to bring them down.
Just so voters are clear about when you say you're a low tax party, that's the reality. Taxes will have gone up.
When I had a chance to lighten the tax burden, I'm a Conservative. I believe in doing so.
What this statement does do is calm a restive Tory backbench, at least for now.
What he has managed to do is satisfy colleagues who are not prepared to vote for any new taxes that increase the overall tax burden. We've broken away from that. I think what the Chancellor described as a death spiral of ever-increasing taxes. Would I have loved him to go further? Yes, but I'll take the win today.
This was an autumn statement from a government firmly in election mode. 20 billion of personal and business tax cuts announced. It was, if you like, another reset moment from a stuttering government. But the Chancellor has a problem. Taxes in Britain are still on course to hit a post-war high, and all of our taxes are still going up. And that makes the pitch of being the party of low taxes a very hard sell to voters indeed. The government is hoping voters will notice a bit of extra cash in their pockets, at least in the short term. If there was ever a sign an election is coming soon, that could be it. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, the Chancellor struck an upbeat tone today with his message of growth and reduced taxes, but there was a warning that the tax burden would continue to be the highest since the Second World War. Sky's economics and data editor Ed Conway has more.
Well, the autumn statement really begins with the story of the economy, the story of growth, economic growth, how much things are improving or indeed getting worse. Last time around, this is showing you GDP, economic growth in the coming years, and the forecast that we got from the Office of Budget Responsibility back in March, OK? And it was going to be a recession in this year and then much stronger growth going out into the future. This time around, let's bring on those latest figures. Better in 2023, so no recession, 0.6% growth. But look at the following years. Weaker in 2024, much weaker in 2025, and then getting back to more or less trend. That's disappointing because less growth means less in the way of tax revenue. It means that basically you're not having that feel-good factor, and we'll come back to that in just a second. However, the cost of living crisis, of course, this has been the big story for us over the last few years. And here again, the forecast from the OBR, this was last time back in March, it's subtly changed, but subtly and really importantly in this case, because while they think inflation is coming down, it's not getting down quite as fast as it was previously, so down to around 2% rather than 0%. And higher inflation means more people being drawn into those higher tax brackets, which is really significant. And when you look at tax, obviously we did have those tax changes from the Chancellor, but have a look at this. This is the tax burden. It's showing you just how much tax we're paying across the economy, all taxes, so personal taxes, but also business taxes. And have a look. Last time around, it was expected to get up really quite high. This time, before all of those tax cuts, particularly the national insurance cuts, were integrated by the government, it looked like it was heading up here, pretty much into the stratosphere. After those tax cuts are incorporated, that line is a bit lower. However, if we kind of draw a line, taking it all the way back to the 1940s, it is still, the tax burden is still going to be at the highest level since at least 1948. So while Jeremy Hunt wants to call this a tax-cutting autumn statement, in practice, this government is raising taxes, raising the incidence of taxes. But in a way, perhaps the most important of all the charts is this one, because it's showing you whether you're getting better off each year or worse off. It's household disposable income, pound in your pocket. And for most of history, again, we're looking back to the 1950s in this case, for most of history, it was going up, up, up each year. This is a growth rate. But now look, this is what was forecast last time around by the Office of Budget Responsibility. A grim 2 years, the worst squeeze that we'd ever had before. Now, the latest figures, they're a little bit better in this year, but the squeeze goes on for 1 extra year, into that election year and potentially beyond. And still, it is the biggest fall in our standard of living since the 1950s. That is the backdrop, really, to this autumn statement. That's the big economic story. And when the Chancellor talks about trying to get the feel-good factor back, it's very hard to do it against a backdrop of such severe strain in the economy.
Well, despite the Chancellor's pledges today, for many the cost of living crisis still bites. Sky News has travelled around the country to get reaction. Our political correspondent Tamara Cohen reports now from Dudley.
This time of year with Christmas kind of making me feel like a bit of a failed mother. Look!
Carla and her baby son Remy have been living on her parents' sofa for a year. She can't afford to rent privately, even though she works, and will make a saving on national insurance.
We was looking at private renting as it was one of our options, and it was still £1,000 a month just for the rent.
Just for rent?
Yeah.
And before we even think about energy bills and...
Yeah.
And is that just completely out of reach?
Yeah, definitely, especially being a part-time single mum.
The Chancellor is hoping areas like this hear loud and clear that tax cuts are coming.
The measures announced today will put money in some people's pockets. But here in Dudley South, a target seat for Labour, whether it's families or those who run a business, people are telling us the struggle with the cost of living has never been harder. Self-employed traders will also get a national insurance cut, but say footfall is down and overheads soaring.
When we started this company about 10 years ago, our energy costs were about 15% of our rent costs, but now we're approaching the 70% mark. Now, if that's not an elephant in the garden, I don't know what is.
Everything's gone up. The big stores can manage, but people like us, we struggle.
So I'm glad I'm at the age I am and where I am, because I would never start out in butchery again, never, ever. It's just too tough to run your own business now. If you was just starting out now, you wouldn't survive.
Better news for the elderly. The state pension will get a £17 a week increase next year. Will it help you a bit?
Well, it'll help, but virtually, against the price of the bills, it's going to be nothing, is it? To drop in the ocean.
It's a government trying to signal there are better times ahead, but hard-pressed families wondering if it all adds up. Tamara Cohen, Sky News, Dudley.
Well, Jeremy Hunt's boost for business came in the form of more tax cuts and investments in equipment and machinery. Our business correspondent Adele Robinson travelled to Bedford, where millions of pounds is being invested.
Giving with one hand, taking away with the other. The sentiment of this brewery on the autumn budget. Their headline, a 75% business rate discount extended past April, saving them £1.5 million.
The business rates relief is a huge benefit, but there is a but in that it is all temporary. And the Chancellor said that himself in the autumn statement. All of these reliefs are temporary. They have to go at some stage. And it feels a bit like the can's been kicked down the road a bit.
Alcohol duties also frozen and a 10% living wage rise, while good for employees has to be paid for by businesses.
I've got to foot the bill, yeah.
Andy's company makes grills and diffusers. He's disappointed in the Chancellor, despite announcing a large tax break for companies spending over £1 million on new equipment.
Asking us to invest £1 million to get some money back is just out of our reach. And we're bigger than small shops and one-off start-offs, so we don't qualify for anything at the lower end. We're sort of piggy in the middle.
It's billed as the biggest tax cut for businesses in modern British history. The idea to boost investment long-term.
And it is a big giveaway, if only for big businesses. If a company is basically able to write off £250,000 for every £1 million spent on new equipment and machinery, it could be a game changer for them. The caveat is you've got to have the money to do it.
Meanwhile, putting more cash in people's pockets, even a little, by cutting national insurance, may sweeten the deal for retailers.
It would definitely be a make or break with my business. Like, I've had such a year of feeling like I'm just going month to month. I need that boost in order to get back to level, to feel safe again, to build a foundation, to keep growing.
But will this budget deliver growth? The official assessment, yes, but modest. Far less optimistic than the government, but a glimpse of light nonetheless. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
Well, joining us now, Sky's political editor Beth Rigby. And the tax burden stays high, we know, Beth, but this presentation of a tax-cutting budget with broad appeal surely puts the party now on an election footing.
And I think tonight we absolutely are on election footing. That national insurance cut timed for the turn of the new year, coming into effect from January the 6th. And I've just had from a senior government source tonight that the party's been told to be ready for an election from January the 1st. Isaac Levido, now he is in number 10 at the moment. He's the Prime Minister's campaign director, will be joining Conservative campaign headquarters, I'm told, on that date full time. So the message tonight is get ready for an election. Now, I also have to say that a Prime Minister putting the option of a May election on the table is different from a Prime Minister saying it's likely. And the reason I say that, Anna, is a lot depends on what happens in the polls. What this autumn statement was trying to do was to signal to people that there would be tax cuts on the way, to try and close the 20-point gap with Labour in the polls. So I think it's fair tonight to say that it's an option on the table. Whether it will be happening is a completely different question. I don't think that decision's been taken. As I said, they will be looking at the polls, but Conservative MPs that I've spoken to that know a lot about campaigning and Conservative campaign headquarters certainly say that the Prime Minister is opening the door on a May election. He could, of course, go later if the polls still don't move. Someone pointed out to me that John Major did an April election in 1992, and you remember that was the tie between him and Neil Kinnock. They thought Labour would win. John Major just about held on. It's too soon to say, but I think that the option is now very much on the table.
Fascinating. Beth Rigby, live there in Downing Street. Thank you.
Good evening and hello from Jerusalem, where tonight more details on the deal between Hamas and Israel have been released. Benjamin Netanyahu has said that the Red Cross will visit those being held to bring them medicines. There are reports tonight that a ceasefire could come into place tomorrow morning and the hostages released by Friday. Well, there are thoughts to be 240 people who have been taken hostage by Hamas more than 6 weeks ago, and 50 of them, nearly 100 women and children, could be released in the deal. Our international affairs editor Dominic Waghorn has tonight's first report from Tel Aviv.
For more than 6 weeks, Israel has felt almost caught in time, trapped in the aftermath of October's attacks. Finally, some hope of a change in this war, a ceasefire that could bring home some of its abducted. Children like Sahar and Erez Calderon, a 12-year-old boy from a kibbutz and his 16-year-old sister. Their mother, Hadass, says she's caught between hope and anxiety over their fate.
It's very sensitive and delicate and fragile, this agreement. It's not in one day, it's like slowly, something can happen. Something wrong can happen, and then it will blow up. I know that without this family, these children and father, without them, I lost my life.
In Israel security headquarters nearby, they're finalising plans to let out hundreds of Palestinian women and children in return for 50 from Israel, in a rolling release stretching over days that may only add to the family's torment. The hostage families now face days and nights of waiting anxiously to hear if their relatives will be chosen for release, knowing at each stage the ceasefire could be broken and the deal could come unstuck. Tonight, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the nation to reassure Israelis this deal won't let Hamas off the hook.
The war continues, and we are going to continue with this war until we achieve all of our goals to bring back all of our hostages, to obliterate Hamas.
But former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert says the deal could help Hamas.
They can move their forces, they can move their headquarters into another place without us possibly knowing it. But this is the only available deal, and there was no way that they couldn't take it.
Into the tunnel. Right now we're going under.
Israel's released more footage of what it claims are tunnels under Al-Shifa hospital. It will pursue Hamas, it says, above and below the ground.
The wiring to that AC.
But not until the ceasefire is over and they're able to bring as many of their people home. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Tel Aviv.
So for now, the wait for hostages' families goes on, and so do the attacks on Gaza. Residents there have said the Israeli military appears intent on advancing before the truce begins, and much-needed aid can be transported into Gaza. Our special correspondent Alex Crawford sent this report from Gaza's border with Egypt, and a warning that it includes images of children who've died.
The silencing of guns hasn't come soon enough to stop Gaza's pain. The talk of peace and ceasefires hasn't stopped the bombs and killings yet. Even with a hostage deal agreed, there's been no let-up in aggression. Instead, an orgy of violence, homes flattened beyond recognition. This was Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. Hospital authorities say 128 bodies were recovered after multiple strikes here through night and day.
As soon as I just closed my eyes to sleep, we woke up in the rubble, black dust, gunpowder, and the sound of screaming.
Every crushed child's body, every grieving parent is emblematic of nearly 7 weeks of failure to stop this bloodletting. There's nothing that can prepare a community for this. And no truce which will erase the suffering. More than 100 corpses are in this grave. Many recovered, badly decomposed from Al-Shifa hospital. The horror of what's happening here goes on and on. The only way out of this hell is still through the Rafah crossing in Egypt. Small groups of dual national families, the mothers clutching their babies to them, are the only ones we saw who've been able to escape. Along with the elderly and infirm. Surviving's tough. Leaving everyone else behind in the Gaza war zone is even tougher.
I left my daughter and she's a cancer patient. But my son said I should go to him in the US. But I left my daughter.
Her life packed up in 4 bags, but she survived where so many haven't. And it took a human rights lawyer to demand answers to some key questions.
Stop the war. Stop the war now. 6,000 children, 4,000 women. Which Hamas are they talking about? They should solve their issues with Hamas away from the civilians.
But there's going to be no relief for civilians, it seems, until the ceasefire kicks in and at least some hostages held in Gaza walk free.
There have been small groups of dual nationals like this coming out all day. They've either got relatives in Gaza or they were working in Gaza. And this is the same gate, the Rafah border crossing, that the hostages will come out. And the real hope is that that will lead to something completely fresh and a much more positive peace in the future.
There are lines of aid trucks waiting to go inside the Strip, with countries like Egypt and Saudi Arabia pushing the UN to break Israel's stranglehold on the delivery. They want UN agencies and not the Israeli Defense Forces to clear the aid coming through Rafah. Saudi Arabia is going further, urging a ban on selling weapons to Israel.
If any country in the world
doesn't utilize the weapon in the right rules and doesn't follow the international law, then one has to think, do they have the right to receive those weapons?
The pause will bring some respite, but so many are hoping it can be used to build so much more. Alex Crawford, Sky News, on the Egypt-Gaza border.
Okay, let's get more from Dom now, who joins us live from Tel Aviv. And Dom, we just saw there in Alex's piece the horrors in Gaza, but also the horror and the nightmare that the families of these hostages here in Israel feel as well tonight.
Yeah, when you talk to the hostage families, as I know you have, what they tell you is you say to them, what's it been like living like this? And they say, we don't really feel like we're living. Some of them say they feel it's unreal, they're living a nightmare. They say, Hadass Calderon, who was featured in that report I reported earlier, I spoke to today, she just said she feels like she's been living through hell, and the hell for her has been made even worse, she says, because the government never tells them anything. Well, again tonight, according to Israeli media sources, they've not been told about a hitch that seems to have happened almost, well, even before the ceasefire has begun tomorrow. We're being told now that no hostages will be released tomorrow. There was no confirmation that they definitely would be released tomorrow, but it seems that it definitely will not be released tomorrow. And the families are expressing anger that they've not been told that. They've just simply heard it in the Israeli media. I think what we're hearing is that because the exchange mechanism, that's, I guess, the mechanism that works out exactly how the hostages are released and then exchanged for Palestinian prisoners, that has not been finalised with Hamas. I think what we can say is that all parties seem to want this deal to be implemented, but they want different things. The Israelis want to get their hostages back. Hamas are playing for time. They clearly want a ceasefire to go on as long as possible. They have been pummeled by the Israeli assault from the air and ground. And they want to have a long ceasefire. And they are going to be playing for time and playing games, as we've seen them do in the past. So even before this deal's been implemented, there are hitches, and that's just going to obviously increase the agony of the families as they wait to hear more about the chances of getting their relatives home.
Yeah, indeed, Dom, an incredibly long night for all. Thank you so much for that update. Well, we've been here in Israel, my team and I, for the last few days, and what's very clear is that there is dual suffering here, both on the Israeli side, where hundreds of families are waiting for their loved ones to come home, and thousands of people in Gaza desperate for a ceasefire, a truce, for this war, for the bombardment to end, so that they can get the much needed aid to enter and get the support that they need. We'll be following developments here on Sky News throughout the evening and throughout the next few days as we learn more about when these hostages will be released. We'll have that to you live here on Sky News. But for now, back to you in London, Anna.
Yelda, thank you. Well, to North America now. 2 people were killed at Niagara Falls on the US-Canada border earlier when a car exploded at a checkpoint on the American side. Within the last few minutes, the governor of New York has said there is no indication of terrorism, and 3 out of 4 bridges that had been closed have now reopened. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner has more.
Caught on CCTV, the moment a car travelling through a border checkpoint accelerates so quickly, it is for a moment airborne. Vehicles usually crawl through this crossing between the United States and Canada. For some reason, this car did not. It slammed into a security checkpoint, causing a fireball and killing the 2 people inside.
We were walking up the road and we seen this car coming down towards the border, and he was flying over 100 miles an hour. There was a car in front of him. He swerved out, went in front of the car, hit the fence, went flying up into the air. He hit, I think there was an elevation part. He went up into the air, and we just seen the fireball, and that's all we could see.
Thick smoke could be seen rising above the border crossing. Officials say no secondary explosive device was found inside the car, and New York's governor ruling out terror as a motive.
There is no sign of terrorist activity with respect to this crash. We've identified that this is a local individual, a Western New Yorker. 2 individuals died in the vehicle. The Border Patrol individual working in the booth was injured. The booth literally protected that individual. They went to the hospital with minor injuries and have been released.
Security services have been on heightened alert for lone wolf attacks since the Israel-Hamas war began. With events planned across the country to celebrate Thanksgiving tomorrow, tensions are high and precautions being taken. Martha Kellner, Sky News.
Well, now to the Netherlands, where the far-right anti-EU politician Geert Wilders has said he will return the country to the Dutch after coming out on top in exit polling. Mr Wilders campaigned on stopping immigration, so-called de-Islamisation, and calling for a referendum on leaving the European Union. He would need to negotiate a coalition with other parties before he could form a government and possibly become Prime Minister. The friends of 4 teenagers killed in a car crash in North Wales have been talking to Sky News today about how much they meant to them. 2 friends of 17-year-old Harvey Owen said they'd been what they called a golden trio, and they'd lost someone who was kind-hearted and the most down-to-earth guy you'd ever meet. Becky Cottrell reports now from Shrewsbury.
4 boys, 4 friends, held in the memories and prayers of this community. Like so many, Harvey Owen's friends are devastated. Owen Pritchard and Jack Brothwood have known him since they were young. Here they are, roughly aged 10. Harvey's on the right. They say he loved poetry, music and Star Wars.
Just soft, kind-hearted, most down-to-earth guy you'll ever meet. Just genuine.
We just loved each other, like, just
all got on.
You've grown up together?
Yeah. Golden trio.
Harvey's mother, Crystal Owen, paid tribute to her boy. She said, "I feel like I'm in a nightmare I wish I could wake up from, but I'm not. I just wanted to say I do appreciate people's kindness, but no amount of messages is going to help me overcome this. Nothing will make this nightmare go away." Her son, along with Will Flitchett, Hugo Morris and Jevon Hurst, had travelled to North Wales for a camping trip, but they never came home. Today at their college, the flag was lowered to half-mast as students here remembered them.
I was mates with all of them together as a group and separately through the 5 years that I knew them. And I think I just wish I could have told them how brilliant they were.
The investigation into how the boys crashed continues with underwater search teams. It was a trip away with friends that ended in tragedy. And what is now clear is how loved these boys were and just how much potential they had. Becky Cottrell, Sky News, Shrewsbury.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, joined, as you can see, by the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail columnist, Amanda Patel. And among the stories we will be discussing, this on the front of the eye, as many papers too, the headline, tax burden to hit a record high despite the 2p cut for millions. Full reaction to the autumn statement. And the rest of the news in just a moment. Well, hello there, watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time to see what's making the headlines then with the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail columnist, Amanda Patel. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Plenty to discuss, as we will see. So let's kick off with the Daily Telegraph, saying that today's autumn statement saw the biggest tax cuts since the 1980s after the 2% cut in national insurance. On the tax cuts, the Daily Mail says, let's hope it's just the start. The Guardian says the £20 billion of tax cuts suggest the Tories have moved on to an election footing. The Times says that Jeremy Hunt has eased the tax burden. The Eye leads on the tax burden being at a record high despite the national insurance cut for millions. The Financial Times highlights concerns that although business and personal taxes have been cut by £20 billion, the overall burden on the taxpayer is still growing. While the Mirror calls the Chancellor's statement a swizz as they ask, do they take us all for fools as national insurance is cut but the tax burden grows? And the Metro suggests that introducing some of the measures in January rather than at the start of the tax year in April may be a sign that an election could be coming soon. The Sun then, New Year's Wahey is the Sun's take on Jeremy Hunt's announcements today. I hope I pronounced that properly, Kevin.
We were struggling over there. Is it Wahey or Wahey?
Oh, I thought you meant the new in the year.
Wahey.
Quick reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. So let's go to Kevin and Amanda, and no doubt everyone in the Treasury and in number 11 Downing Street will be tuning in to see what the papers, how they, react to this. It's how the nation reacts, often is it not? And it seems to be two things. Yes, the tax burden's falling, but goodness, isn't it still high, Amanda?
I'm afraid that the Tory party will be rather disappointed with the headlines, even from supporting newspapers like The Sun, who, for instance, have campaigned forever not to put any more tax on booze. And, of course, they managed to get in their little two-paragraph intro saying, and there's not been any tax on booze. But even they say, but the overall tax burden's on course to hit a post-World War II record. And the Daily Mail, we are behind the Conservative government. We do believe there's something serious about Rishi, and we welcome all of these. God, I sound like I'm the royal family. We welcome these tax cuts. They're brilliant, and it's going to make a lot of difference to a lot of people. But even it's a cautionary headline.
Yeah, but you're right. They do look in government for the front pages, because it's not just people who buy papers. It's not just people who watch them on TV in reviews. They see them in shops and newsagents. If you're going to buy something else, or you're in a supermarket, they're on a stand. They're kind of like posters. So they put great emphasis on them. They want to win them.
It's like snap polling in some respects.
It is, and they'll see their wins and their losses. I think they'll see the Sun as a win. I think overall,
Back to the Sun, yeah.
And the Sun had campaigned against any increase in fuel duty.
And there was also the white van man reduction in NI for them specifically.
But you're right about even the Sun has the qualification on course to hit a post-World War II record, the tax take. But they will be slightly more worried. I think it'll take you as a win in the Mail, but they will be in that big red writing across the middle, but with total burden still vast. And that's a challenge when you say, let's hope it's just a start.
But the other thing is that never underestimate how seriously the newspapers take, the political parties take this. I mean, they will be getting a briefing even before you got it, Anna, on the front pages, and they'll be sitting there and going, was hoping better in the Mail. Sun, well, it's kind of a hit if you don't read into it. Just don't read any of the other papers.
Jeremy Hunt will have probably called the editors of The Sun and the Mail and the Express and the Telegraph, the Times afterwards, possibly not the Guardian or the Mirror, probably called the FT.
Don't take my editor's name in vain.
No, but I think that's right. No, I think it's right. You have an exchange. It doesn't mean you have to follow what they say when you get the call. I think it's good that editors are called, but... you can't get away, and the FT pick up on it. You just can't get away. The tax burden surging despite Hunt cuts, as the FT does across. So 10 billion on national insurance, £9 a week for those who get it. Interestingly, he went for national insurance, not income tax, because pensioners would have got the income tax cut, because there's about a quarter of women over 66 and a third of men over 66 who work. So we'll pay income tax, but you don't pay national insurance once you go past that age. So they won't get the benefit from this.
But this so-called fiscal drag freezing up until, was it 28, 29, the rate that income tax come in, roughly 12,500 basic, 50,000 when you go up to the 40p rate, as the figures the Financial Times points out, because it's all in the documents, I read it myself. There are going to be 4 million low-paid people paying income tax who weren't before. 3 million people are going up from higher. The rate will go up from 20 to 40p.
All that is true, but you've got pensioners have been given more than they expected, nearly 10% increase. You've got...
That's an inflation...
But it doesn't matter. Kevin, the top line for a lot of people who, we are very sophisticated people. We make a very informed and sophisticated analysis in papers. Lots of people do just see the headlines and they will say, pensioners, we're safe. But they'll say, the working, the basic...
National insurance.
National insurance, that's a cut. That's a triumph for 27 million people. And there are feel-good things in this. The pensioners feel safe, which is great, and also the basic wage is significantly increased. And those are good messages which go out in headlines.
Because it's a very broad spread
and they're
winners.
working.
We normally do the winners and
but don't we want to get to the truth? Don't we want to get to the truth? The truth is in the documents, and you see he's given a bit with one hand and he's taking back far more with the other.
Let me put this to you, that what he's also done, what the Tories have done, is that they have targeted ordinary working-class people. Who gives a damn about the fiscal drag? Because they're people that, according to a lot of people...
They're ordinary working-class people.
You've got to let me finish my sentence for once. Can we do that for a change, Anna?
Stop talking, Kevin.
Hang on, you've fallen for her spin there.
The majority of these headline initiatives are for ordinary working-class people or pensioners. And the people who are disadvantaged are, you've got to be earning 51,000 or for that top bracket. I just think the top line is something that they've done very cleverly, because what the Labour Party can't turn around and say is you're only looking after the rich. Because what they're doing is they're looking at, and I think the Tories have actually stolen they've stolen your thunder, and they've also, or your ground, and they've set an incredible trap for...
Just wait me up when you're finished. I mean, it was rather a long monologue.
By doing national insurance, you target workers, and this is,
they've set Labour a trap. Is the Labour Party going to come and say we're not going to do this or going to revert?
No, I think Labour normally now just say whatever the Conservative government is doing, we will do, with a few exceptions. But who are the 4 million low-paid workers who will pay income tax for the first time, other than working-class voters? The 3 million higher payers who'll go over the 50,000 limit, so their marginal rate will double from 20 to 40p. They're probably more likely to be Daily Mail readers. But the tax burden, the overall take, will be the highest in the post-war period.
But it's been eased if we look there. I mean, only recently there was no suggestion of any tax cuts at all.
Exactly.
Clearly, the mood has changed. The electoral polling
what's changed.
does not look good
that's what's changed.
Yes.
But because the polling hasn't changed,
and there is also more money because, there's inflationary pressure on wages, and the tax threshold, the fiscal drag, the tax threshold has stayed the same. So they've got more money in the whole tax take. So there is spare money.
Yeah, well, if they've got more money, people haven't, because, again, Ed Conway's picked up the figures. They're quite clear in the OBR report. People are going to be worse off. Their disposable income is going to be lower at the next election.
Because of inflationary pressure.
Well, the money for the national insurance cut and the business money is effectively going to be paid by public service cuts. Yeah. So if your kid's in a school, I'm sorry, you might get an extra 8 or 9 quid. National insurance, which you will welcome. It won't go anywhere near to covering your higher food bills, but you'll get it anyway.
It's still nearly 500 quid that you weren't expecting.
You're going to pay.
I'm sorry, if you think that's trivial, then you're not living in the real world.
You're going to pay in terms of worse services. And polling shows people put a greater emphasis now on improving public services.
So that's your line there, more austerity to fund election bribes. That's basically the sum up of the Mirror's take on this.
Yeah.
And that is the problem, isn't there? Where is the money for extra public spending to sort out the backlog in the NHS, for example, or even for those who are still striking in the health service? Nobody's mentioned social care, massive shortage of teachers, maths teachers in secondary schools, for example. Where's all the solving of that happening here?
Politics and leading up to elections is about simple messages. And what you do is you sit down, as I've done in an election, and which we only won one extra seat from, I have to say. I'm not saying laying to any great success. Simple messages that hit your target audience and try and undermine your opposition. And for supporting working class people, the Tories have moved their tanks onto Labour's law.
I remember back before,
You can't do quickly.
before 1997, Ken Clarke cut income tax by a penny. I remember that Tory papers were, hey, great, here we go. Zero political credit. And I think that may happen again. This is the fifth relaunch. When you consider they had the net zero relaunch, Sunak had his conference speech relaunch, then you had the state opening relaunch, then you had the reshuffle relaunch, when we brought back Cameron, which went against the conference speech relaunch, which is about getting rid of the older consensus. This is the fifth relaunch, effectively.
But what they've done is they've kept the powder
I'm not
dry.
sure it'll work.
Everyone was gagging for tax cuts. But he's kept his own party happy, and he's appealed to an electorate which are normally safe Labour voters.
I think you've I think you've got it with his own party. I think that's what it's about.
OK,
Hunter's gone back on what he was going to do. I think it's his party.
Yeah. Anyways, it is fascinating, isn't it, to digest. Next up, though, we'll take a look at a moving story. Could the Israel-Hamas conflict be about to enter a new phase? Take a look at the timings of what we expect to come as well in just a moment.
So we're all very excited at the zoo at the minute on the birth of our latest black rhino. She brings our numbers up to 9 here at the zoo. Hopefully she'll join us out on the paddock this morning. She's sticking really close to Mum. So wherever Zori's outside, you'll usually see the calf trotting up behind her. So the calf's just over a week old now, weighing at around 50 kilos when first born. She's she brightens up everyone's day. Everyone's very keen to see her. There's crowds gathering behind the restaurant trying to catch the glimpse of the rhino as she's out and about on the paddock. So she's an eastern black rhino. So in captivity, there's been over 100 births over the last few years. Here, our last black rhino was born 3 years ago. So we've waited 15 months for this little girl to arrive.
Well, from land mammals to sea mammals, first grey seal pups of the winter season have been born on the North Norfolk coast.
It's that time of year when we welcome the grey seals to Blakeney Point on the North Norfolk coast. And over the next few weeks, we're expecting somewhere in the region of 4,500 pups to be born. It's staggering when you go out there just a couple of months before, and there's basically no seals there, and then in the space of just a couple of months, 4,500 pups are born. Each pup will have a mum, so that's another 4,500 seals, and then there's the bulls, the males as well. So probably somewhere in the region of 15,000 seals will be on Blakeney Point over the course of this winter. So we play a really important role working with our volunteers to help manage disturbance to them. So we have visitors who are really keen to come and see them for obvious reasons, but they are wild animals, and this is a really important part of their life cycle. So it's really important that we respect them and we give them space. So we have staff and volunteers out on Blakeney Point right now, ready to welcome visitors, help them to understand what they're seeing in front of them, but to explain how they can observe them safely, asking them to keep their distance and helping to protect the seals.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. The 5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me once again, Kevin Maguire and Amanda Patel from the Mirror and the Mail. Welcome back to both of you. So this ceasefire, hostage deal, we watch and we wait, beginning to get some timings. The Israelis saying hostages won't come out before Friday. Suggestion from Hamas that the ceasefire could start at 10 a.m. local time on Thursday. But it seems so sensitive and so complicated, in fact, to get them safely out, that there's a lot to go to then, Kevin.
And can you imagine if you're a family member waiting for information on your loved one, get the name, are they on the list, will they become free, are they alive, are they dead, what condition they are. But you look at that picture on the front of the Guardian of Gaza City, the flare over it. You just look at that devastation, and you're quite right. What's going to... The fighting halts for 4 days. You're going to get... Hamas are going to try and sneak... They're not going to have them emerge from wherever they were holding.
How do they come...
And the Israelis are going to be having huge surveillance to try and find out, which is, understandable on both sides.
And how do you get those people out of safety? You sort of... when you hear that they're going to be... Will they walk together? Will the Palestinian prisoners... walk onto a bridge somewhere, and will the Israeli hostages, will they, do they have to meet somebody? Do they have to guarantee? Because surely Israel's not going to release 150 Palestinian convicted people. They said not murderers or killers, things like that. They're not going to release them until they know that their people are safe and alive.
Yeah, but
how do you negotiate that?
The Palestinians are women and children. They're not fighters.
But they're still
Palestinians consider them hostages, and groups in Israel too are worried about human rights abuses and some of the people who are arrested, detained, and convicted by Israel.
Detained charge at times as well.
Absolutely, but in this tragedy, and it's been an absolute terrible tragedy. This is a glimmer of hope, a bit of light.
And when Netanyahu...
You don't know how long it'll last.
There were three. There was Netanyahu and then two other officials. One, I think there was the leader of the opposition, the third person who spoke this evening. And they all... you can see the terror in their eyes, and they kept saying, this is the hardest decision we've ever had to make, and we pray to God that this will work. Even at this last minute, they don't know. They say, we guarantee we're going to keep the war, we'll keep bombing, the war will go on, but we're giving it this window, and we pray we've made the right decision.
Well, the policy in Israel, Netanyahu and his allies, is to destroy Hamas. Well, they're now having to negotiate with Hamas.
You can't destroy Hamas.
And that doesn't mean...
Without killing the hostages.
Exactly. And it's just a reality. You have to... If some groups have got 240 hostages, you have to speak and negotiate with them, just on humanitarian grounds. But you hope... You hope the worst of the fighting is over, or at least I hope the worst of the fighting is over. That doesn't mean Israel isn't going to go after Hamas in the future, but so many innocent Palestinians have died along the way. So many innocent Israelis have died in this conflict.
Run out of time. Apologies, Amanda. We will talk more, no doubt. Both of you, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Stay with us to the 11. We'll talk also about the Arch at Wembley as well. Right now, let's take a look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
So the next few days will be drier than recently, but it will turn noticeably colder by Friday. A mostly cloudy, mild but windy start tomorrow. Coastal gales in the north, drizzly outbreaks over many western parts and more general rain for central Scotland. Far north can expect showers as well. Staying cloudy through the morning, there'll be some sunny breaks, mostly east of high ground, developing over the northern half of Scotland. Southern parts mainly dry. Northern areas will see further drizzly outbreaks, more general rain. Scattering of showers will follow to northern Scotland, staying very windy in the north.